Welcome back to our video series for Release Control 6.1. And in our previous videos, we did our installation for Release Control, and we also configured security for the users. So the next thing that we're going to do is create some different release elements that are required in the system before you can actually use it. So this is Chapter 7 in the installation guide. The first thing that we're going to do is set up the timeline view. And the timeline view is underneath Release Trains, and then you go under Timeline. Now the first time that you come in here, as an administrator, you will want to click on Create, and then all you have to do is close and then click Refresh a couple of times, and it will create for you. You know that it's created when the Create button disappears. All right, the next thing we're going to do is look at our release types. Now, release types are stored inside of an aux table. So you just have to click up in your profile button and go to Administrative, Application Administrator, and we're going to go under the aux data area. And it is stored in the release type table. So by default, we have 3 different types that come in the system: major, minor, and emergency. If that's good enough for you, then that's great. If you have other types of releases that you do, you can put those in. You can edit these, delete these, whatever you want to do. It is best to finalize these as quickly as possible, because you will see as we continue on entering things that these values become important. So it might be good just to take a quick time out and really think about what you want your release types to be and get these right first. For example, a lot of people want to change like minor to be called patch, or something like that. And if you want to change one, all you have to do is click its name and then update it. And you can delete them also if you just don't want those. For now, we're going to keep these. The next thing that you need to update is your list of applications. These are the applications that you will be releasing with Release Control. And those are in the table called Applications. So by default, we have one application called App 1. And just like previously, you can submit new ones, or you can come in here and edit them and update the name, and you can just delete them. My example that I'm going to be working with is kind of silly. It's called Hello World. So let's just change this. So I will have mine in here. All right, so that's done. And now when we come back to our view, it's Hello World. Okay, the next piece is our environments. Now, environments are a little bit different, so they are done back through SBM. So we'll come over here. And to create an environment, there are none in here by default. We can actually see that. Let's go down here. We'll go to Environment, All Environments. There's no environments out of the box. So we have to create them. So we'll just click on New. And if you're in the Browse section, you can come down and oh, did I miss it? Oh, here we go. Environments. Oop, wrong one. Here we go. So you can go under Environments and choose it. And you just want to give your environment a name. I'm just going to create a really simple one like Dev QA Prod. So I'll start with Dev. You can give it a description. And you can say if this environment is a standard environment or a restricted environment. When you have a restricted environment, that will require approvals before you're allowed to deploy stuff into that environment. So that's what that means. So Dev is just going to be standard. And I'm going to assign a release engineer who will be in charge of this environment. And you can do a release manager too if you want to. Submit this. Okay, so right now the environment is created, but it's not considered online. So we'll just place it online real quick. All right, now that it's online, we can actually use it as we need to. All right, but we need some more environments, so let's create a couple more. I'm going to say new environment. So that was dev. Let's do QA next. That's also standard. I'll pick a different release engineer this time. Okay, and then we'll also put that one online. All right. And then finally, I will do my production environment. Okay, now production, I want to have an approval process before people send things to production, so I'm going to make that one restricted. And we'll assign release, a release team. Submit. And we'll put that one online. Okay. Now that our environments are created, we can create our development paths. That one's a little bit confusing and hard to grasp at first, so we'll just start creating it and then you'll get the idea. So in here we'll say submit, and we're going to find the deployment path. Let's see where to go. That is under, oh, here it is. Okay, deployment path. Okay, so deployment paths are related to your types of deployments. So for example, let's just do a major. That's pretty standard. We'll do that one first. What should we call this one? We'll call this a full release cycle. How about that? All right, and we can assign a release engineer to this one, and we can assign some secondary release engineers if we want to as well. All right, so now that our deployment path is created, we have to actually add environments to this path. So we will just click on the Edit Deployment Path to start that. All right, so this is our full release cycle. So we want this to be the full path, the biggest, longest path that we do. So in my example, that's going to be going to the dev system, and then the QA system will be next, and then the production system. Now over here we can configure various things. For example, if you select the dev system, you can say, is the dev system required? Yes or no. When it's the first one in the deployment path, it's required by default. You have to pick it. You can specify if people are allowed to redeploy. So if something goes wrong with that deploy, are they allowed to redeploy or not? I'm going to say yes for the dev environment. And if a deployment fails, where do you want it to go? In this case, we want it to just, stay at the dev environment. All right, for QA, we're going to say, is the QA environment required? For a full cycle, sure, that one can be required. You notice it adds a little R here. And are you allowed to redeploy in the QA environment? Everybody's environment's different, so you have to, look at your processes and decide if that's okay or not. I'm going to say, nah, we don't want them to redeploy to QA. And if a deploy fails, what do you want to happen in this situation? So for me, I think I'm going to say, if a QA deploy fails, I'm going to send you back to the dev environment. So that is the path that I want you to go. All right, let's do production. All right, so for production, is it required to go to production? Sure, we'll say yes. And are you allowed to redeploy? We'll say no. And if a deploy fails, what do you want to happen? I'm going to say that we want to go back to our dev environment. So you'll see the path hooks in and goes back to the dev environment. Yes, we want to lock that down. So there we have our little lock around it. Okay, so we'll close that one and say okay. So we have our path set up. And down here you can see sort of a visual of what that path looks like. All right, so now that we have our path constructed, let's activate it. Okay, and now it's active and it's ready for use. So we have a couple more types. This one again was for the major type, for a major release. I'm going to now go in here and let's do a couple others for the different types. So let's see. Let's do a minor release. So if we're just doing a minor release, minor release cycle, okay, and we'll assign a release engineer and we'll say submit. Okay, so again, we'll need to add our environments. So we'll say edit deployment path. Okay, so on a minor release, maybe we still, have it similar. Maybe we still have a dev, a QA, and a production environment. But maybe this time in our dev environment, we're going to allow redeploy. And maybe in our QA environment, we allow redeploy directly into QA because it's just a minor release. And maybe even on fail, we allow you to stay in the QA environment. So that might be a difference that we have in those. And again, in production, we'll say this one's required. Oh, we should have done that on QA. We like QA. Let's require QA too. And in production, we'll make that required. Are you allowed to redeploy? Probably still not allowed to redeploy. But on fail, maybe we just want to go back to the QA environment. Maybe we don't have to go all the way back to dev on this environment. And then let's also set a lock on here. All right, that looks good. We'll say okay. And we'll activate that path. All right, so there's our next one. All right, we have one more to go, so let's do that one. Say new deployment path. And this is going to be for our emergency release. Emergency release cycle. Okay, and let's give it a, whoops, we'd search first. Give it a release person. Okay, and then we'll edit our path. Now, maybe because this one's for emergencies, maybe we skip the dev environment and we go straight into the QA environment and then directly into prod. When it's an emergency, you gotta do things faster. All right, so maybe we allow redeploy in the QA environment, and on a fail, we go to QA. And maybe in production, we're still going to be required. I don't know, you might even allow redeploys in production for an emergency. Maybe we will. Let's do that. And when deploy to production fails, what do you want it to do? Where should it go? Should we be sent back to production to try it again, or should we be sent back to QA? I think maybe we'll still go back to QA for that. And we can set a lock to lock this one down as well. Right, and we'll say okay. And then we can activate it. All right, so there we go. So now we can close that one out. Now when we're in here and we look at our environments, we can see all three environments. And if we wanted, you could drill in and look at them. And in my environments, those are just ones that I own, but I don't personally own any of them. So we won't see them in there. And we will see our deployment paths in here under release packages. So if we come in here, we'll see the 3 that we just created. And if we wanted to look at them or anything, we can open them up. And we can see our paths that we created. Okay, so those are the release elements that we needed to set up before we can actually do any releases. So in our next video, we will start working on the plugins, and the plugins allow you to do integrations with other systems, and those are also important to use release control as your central repository and view into your release. We need to set up those integrations with other systems. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.